Hello everyone, this is Suresh. Today we are going to cover testing and application deployment in Angular. Following are the topics covered in this module. Software testing, why should we perform a testing, why we are supposed to do software testing, types of testing, unit testing, functional testing, integration testing, testing Angular application using Jasmine and Karma, version control system. Version control is nothing but versioning, like sim versioning, all those things. Jasmine and Karma are the frameworks. Karma is a task runner. Jasmine is a framework which we use to develop a test cases. Running the application on production server using an Nginx, architecture of Nginx, deployment of an application using Docker. So these are the topics which we are going to cover today. Testing. Software testing. Why do we need to do a software test? Software testing is a process to evaluate the functionality of a software application with an intent to find whether the developer software met the specified requirements or not and to produce a bug-free quality product. So everybody, what is our goal? We have to deliver a product with all the features without any bugs, quality product. So to do that, what we were doing is that first developers develop the code and QA engineers comes and they will start testing the application. They will make sure that no errors are there. If there are any issues, bugs, they'll create a bug, they will assign it back to the developer. This is how it does, right? We fix it and send it to the product. So once the QA people provides a sign off, then only we'll give it to UAT test or a production environment. That's how we use it to do it. If there are any defects after deploying it to production, then again, it is the same process wherein you need to work on the defect and deliver it back. So then, it's all about software testing is to deliver a bug-free quality product. Why should we perform testing? Cost, to reduce the cost of fixing the bugs. When you deliver a product, if it has any bugs, fixing those bugs involves a lot of cost. That is what we need to reduce it. So if you able to identify those bugs in the early stage, the cost of fixing those bugs will be very less to produce the good quality product. Why do you think that fixing a bug is more expensive? If we delivered a product to the production, there is an issue. You identified some customer or a product owner's business, they identified it. Now they created a bug. The bug has to be prioritized. The developers have to put the efforts. QA engineers again they have to test it. Again, you have to engage an infrastructure team or a DevOps team to deploy the application. And again, you have to impact the customers because while you're deploying the production, it might go down. Again, this is all about process. So that involves a lot of cost to produce good quality products. Why you have to test it? You have to give a quality product. To make software application defect free, making sure that there are no defects in the code which you are delivering it. To check if behavior of an application is same in development and production environment. That means the code which you have written, the application which you are developing should be the functionality should be working same like how it was working in production, also how it was working in development environment. If it is working properly in dev environment, it is expected that it should be working in the same proper way in production also without any issues. Because of the environment issues, development environment, you have set up everything and it worked well. But when you move to production, it should not fail. Types of testing: unit testing, functional testing, integration testing. So there are three kind of categories of testing is there. We'll go through that. Unit testing, functional testing, integration testing. So in unit testing, what all you will be covering? Who does the unit testing nowadays? It is a agile world. Whatever the code which you are going to write, your story itself contains a acceptance criteria saying that you have to develop the feature, you have to test it, you have to write automate it, functional testing, whatever unit testing, everything you are supposed to take care of it. That is a goal. So unit testing is something is used to test small pieces of independent code uncovered with how they are unconcerned. What they are saying is unit testing is something which a developer does write the code to test your code. That means you are automating the behavior how you test the application that you have to automate. Let's assume you have written a class. The class contains some behaviors and properties. So it is talking to a database and to fetch some query data. So this is the behavior your class has maybe. Now you have to automate the testing process. so that your application, whenever you deploy a code or somebody adds a new feature to your application, so that automatically it will test the functionality instead of you testing it manually every time. If you automate and the code coverage and everything, it will automatically does by clicking a button or running a simple script saying that test something. It will take care of testing entire code, whatever the pieces it needs to be covered. Use it to prevent regressions, bugs that occur repeatedly. So regression is a quick way of testing your application every time when you do some changes, when you deploy it to some environment. Easy to pinpoint and fix the problem. Unit testing is helpful to do fixing the problem in advance, so that if there is any expected parameter to be passed to a particular function and it will throw an error. That's how you are able to easily identify instead of you waiting for a QA to raise a bug. If it takes a longer time to execute, it is likely that the code under test is much more complex than it should be. Longer time to execute. If it takes maybe any piece of code which is talking to database is going to take longer time, you can easily identify hits also because you have a time modes and all everything. Popular tools to perform unit testing on Angular application is Jasmine. So if you want to come up with a unit testing in Angular application, you have a different frameworks, but Jasmine is a very popular framework. What is Jasmine does? Angular itself is a framework. On top of that, you are using another framework to test your application unit test code. What Jasmine does? Functional testing, end-to-end testing. Functional testing are made against a combination of many units. Application functionality testing, like how a end user, if you are developing a browser based application like a Gmail or something, it will be tested like how a end user test your application, how a end user access your application. So what end user will do, a QA engineer will do. QA user, if I ask you to open my application in a browser, he will go to the browser and enter http localhost 4200, and he will start entering username password and I click a button. That functionality also can be automated. That is called functional testing and all. You can use any number of external objects or systems like database, UI, security, and other application layers. You can talk to database also. You can talk to any other external systems also which are being used in your application. Takes longer time to execute than unit test cases, because unit test cases maybe you can mock it, but whereas functional testing it needs to be interacted with the real-time scenarios. Functional testing represent major releases where unit test represents only minor changes, due to which they are expected to change less often than the unit test cases. Functional testing means mostly will be running before you deploy to production or a QA environment, maybe from your end. Example, when user enters username password and clicks a send button or a login button, that user will be logged in. We can easily see that this functional group will comprise of many unit tests, one for validating username, one for handling a button click, whatever example I give. So integration testing. Integration testing ensures that the entire system application is working correctly or not. It can be executed only with a realistic environment like a real database servers and other systems which are like the target production environment. You are completely doing maybe your upstream systems, downstream systems. If you are talking to Microsoft Azure, if you are talking to Amazon Web Services, completely you are going to test all the functionalities, or you might be dependent on some other APIs. Completely you are going to do that kind of testing. It can be executed only with a realistic environment, whatever. It is used in case you need to test a separate systems like database and applications. It is slower than the other testing application, complex to write also, because it involves with the real-time scenarios, real-time systems. For example, a functional testing may successfully test the ability of an ideal system to open help the dialog box like a UI related. Functional testing is mostly like in this context is like clicking on a button, launching a pop-up, filling the data, clicking again, saving the data. These kind of like how a human test the web application. That is what they are talking about. Testing Angular applications. So unit testing. Types of testing in Angular application. Broadly, there are two forms of testing for an application. Unit testing. It refers to testing the business logic of a small and isolated unit of code to verify the correctness of the behavior. Obviously, you are going to test the code which you have written. It will taking care of the code coverages, whether you have covered all the scenarios or not, something like that. It is like testing, automation of testing your developer code which you have written. End-to-end testing, it simulates the user actions and checks whether the application behaves as expected. It simulates the user behavior. Like I'm a user, I'm logging into Facebook, username, password, click on a button. Same how you are filling the data, how you are clicking, how you are validating the username, password, whether it is wrong or not. When you see an error message, and again you will retry. Same like how user behavior it works. During end-to-end testing, you should not run the unit testing scripts. So types of testing in Angular application. Unit testing, end-to-end testing. So for that, you will be using a Jasmine Mocha. Mocha, or you can call it as Mocha. So written in Jasmine or Mocha. What is end-to-end testing? You will be using a Protector, which is a wrapper for Selenium. End-to-end testing can be done in Angular using Protector. Why can't you use Selenium? There is a strong reason. It is a wrapper for Selenium, but still it has more advantages than Selenium. Selenium is used to test applications in a 13 language. It supports 13 languages. Java, .NET, C, Cold Fusion, C, PHP, Python. So many approaches are there, but you can still test the application, how end user access the application. Same way, Protector also supports, but Selenium cannot access the model of Angular. Model means data. That means that component properties, objects which we create, right? Services, these cannot be accessed by Selenium. Selenium is only for testing the browser based application. But whereas a Protector can talk to or can access the model of Angular data bindings, it can talk to that. Protector supports for all the browsers. K stands for Karma. This symbol is for Protector. This symbol is for Jasmine. This symbol is for Mocha. So what I'm saying is these are the things which will be using it. So what you will do in a testing framework, you will write test runner and a browsers. Test runners are nothing but Karma. Task runners you can call it as. Karma is a task runner. Protector is a end-to-end testing purpose. Jasmine is a testing framework. So the test cases are written in using unit testing libraries such as Jasmine or a Mocha. Mocha is the one which is used to test JavaScript based code applications. So Jasmine and Karma. Jasmine is a behavior driven development framework for testing JavaScript code. So Jasmine can be used for JavaScript code. Mocha can be used for JavaScript code. It's a behavior driven development framework. Even though Jasmine comes with its own browser based test runner, we will be using command line based test runner called Karma that can be easily integrated into the application. What is a Karma? Karma is a task runner, like how you have a Maven. Jasmine is a behavior driven, it's a framework. Just understand, if you want to test a JavaScript code, you need some framework. Testing is a framework, so that is comes with a Jasmine. Even though Jasmine comes with its own browser based test runner, we will be using a command line based test runner called Karma that can be easily integrated into the application. So Karma is something. See, you have a framework with you, but who will run the test cases? The test runner, the task runners, like Ant and Maven. What are those called? Task runners. Ant is a task creator, task runners. Same way, Karma is the one which will help you to run your test cases, which is a command line application. Karma is used for testing JavaScript code written with or without frameworks. Whether you write with framework, without framework, you can still use Karma to test the application. That means you have to say Karma test, something like that. Karma can run the test cases to check whether the application works properly in multiple browsers or not. Karma is a configuration file which is used to do some configuration related to browser and all. Angular application setup comes bundled with a Jasmine, so there is no need to install separately. What they are saying is Jasmine is a framework used to test a JavaScript based application. So Jasmine by default comes with you when you create a project. You don't need to install them separately. When we create a new project and start, so CD Suresh Angular February batch 2020. So here we say ng new unit testing whatever. So go to the project Angular February 2020 unit testing example. See here today, if you look at it, Karma is there. What is Karma? Before we go that, Package.json file is there. In the package.json file, there are two different type of dependencies. Dependencies, dev dependencies. Dependencies are nothing which are required for production purpose. If you want to run your application without any issues, you need dependency because these are required to run your application in a production environment. Without forms, I cannot validate my form. Without forms, I cannot do data bindings. Router. Without routers, I cannot implement a routing. Even though if you implement and this dependency is being not available in the project, it will fail. RxJS libraries, zones, whatever data binding concepts or data state management related, all those things will not work. Compiler, common libraries, all these things. So you need these must mandatorily in the project. Dev dependencies. If you look at it, Jasmine, Karma, and TypeScript, TSLint, all these are required only for development purpose. Once you compile your TypeScript code into ECMAScript or a JavaScript, you don't need this. This happens at the time of build time. TSLint, syntax checking, strict all those things. TSLint, TS node, TypeScript node versions or whatever. Protector, testing purpose, functional testing. Karma, task runners, whatever the testing, unit testing. Code coverage, Istanbul, Chrome launcher, Karma Chrome launcher, headless browsers, Jasmine, the framework which we use. All these are required only for development purpose, not to run in a production. So if you observe here, Jasmine is a framework which already available to you. That is the reason why they are saying you don't need to install. By default, Angular will give you the setup. So what they are saying is Jasmine is the framework which you are going to use, and a Karma is a task runner. What is Karma? If you go and look at it, karma.config.javascript file. This is a JavaScript file. The code, if you look at it, it looks like a JavaScript only. What it does, so coming to Karma, Karma is a configuration file. The Karma talk tells you clearly you are going to configure something. What is that? You are going to configure something for unit testing purpose. You are using a Jasmine framework. Build Angular dev kit, that is also required for development purpose, building an Angular application. What is our base path? Empty means the current root, whatever. Plugins, you are going to use Jasmine, you are going to use Chrome launcher, and you are going to use Jasmine HTML report generation. You are going to use Istanbul reporter, code coverage, how much percentage of code is being covered, all those things. The code which you are writing in a component.ts file, what is the class name? App component. What is the property it has? Title. What template it is using? App component.html. If you go and look at it, app component, it has a unit test covered. I'll tell you what is Jasmine. If you want to do unit test cases, you have to create a suite. Inside a suite, what you will keep? You will keep a features. Inside a features, what you will keep? A test case. Can we do this in a normal functionality wise? I have a Facebook application. Inside a Facebook, what all the suites you will have? Suite related to login, suite. Inside login, you will have a features like login, register, something like this. Or you can say suite name as user authentication suite, login registration. Inside login, what test cases you will have? Valid username password, login user, forgot password, maybe invalid credentials, something like that. Register user, all those things. These are the test cases. Now another suite, I can say products suite. Inside product suite, you can have add product. Inside add product, add a new product. Maybe you will have a add place order, or you can say query products. Something like this, I'm giving an example. In this test case, what you will write? Now, if you want to convert this, just imagine this example. If you want to convert, you have to use some framework. So what does Jasmine does is that it provides you a method described is a method used to group test cases. It is a method to write test case logic. These are the methods you need to understand. And before each, after each, like this, Jasmine provides a methods to test your applications. It is a test case. So you have to use some assertions that we are going to see. Like this, Jasmine provides an approach. First of all, The code which you are going to use TypeScript only, language. Now if you observe import statement, let me run first of all. Whenever I say in this cd unit testing, first of all I have to say ng serve. I'll walk you through the code later. First understand how do you run a unit test coverage, how do you configure the scripts. When you trigger ng test, what it is happening. So your application is working properly. First of all, verify. Then you can check the unit test coverage. 4200. Your application is working properly, no issues. Close this. Now go back to the another terminal. Let the application run as it is. Don't touch that. Open another terminal. Now unit testing. CD Suresh, February batch 2020, ng test. I have to run this command. So ng test. If I say ng test, what happens? Observe. I have to go to the unit testing coverage. So from here I have to say ng test. ng test. Who is giving all these features to you? Your Angular command line scaffolding project is giving it to you by default. They are doing all these things for you. It opened a browser 9876 localhost in a Chrome application. Now Karma connected to some server. It ran 3 specifications. 0 test case failed, and those test cases are related to app component. Should have a as title something. I'll tell you later what it is, all those things. Now come back to the application command line prompts. In the command line also it printed saying that I have run 3 test cases successfully. Those 3 test cases executed without any issues. Total out of 3, 3 got successfully executed. Now come back to the code. Package.json file. Whenever I say ng test, go to package.json file. Whenever I say ng test, what happened here? Ng Angular the build tool. Whenever I say ng serve, what it is doing? It is internally running a serving an application. Now it also, instead of I saying ng serve, I can also say one more command, the script tag I'm talking about. Control C, I'm killing the application. Instead of saying ng serve, I can also say npm start. npm node package manager start. What it does is that npm means node package manager. What is our package? Package.json file. npm starts internally triggers ng serve. Why? If you look at it here, the command npm start, which is internally triggering ng serve. It is serving the application. First compiles, it is serving. Same way, Control C here, the scripts are nothing but a shortcuts. npm test you can say, or you can say ng test. When you say ng test, which is going to trigger ng test. What is ng test? Or you can say npm test also. When you say ng test, which is configured somewhere in our angular.json file, or you can say test command. This is configured here. What it is doing is that, which will internally goes and trigger the main entry file is that src.test.ts file. What is there in the src.test.ts file? Polyfills. If any of the functionalities of JavaScript doesn't support an IE older browser or something like that, polyfills are the one which are going to take care of backward compatibility. ts configuration.spec.json file. Karma configuration. Where is the Karma configuration? Karma.config.javascript file. We have those files, ts configuration test spec file. So if you open a spec file, all these, the main file C, you are telling whenever you run a command called ng test, go through src folder, don't bother about subfolders. You go through all the subfolders and find a .spec file. Every component is ending with a .spec file. Every component which we are going to write, if you want to write a unit test cases, you have to put app.component instead of .ts, you have to say app.component.spec file. So these kind of configurations, they are done with the .configuration files. So now all the src folder, it will scan through, wherever it has a spec file, it will include. Now what is our Jasmine types you are going to use? Output ts configurations, tsconfig.javascript. Why? You need to compile the TypeScript code into JavaScript, ECMAScript, whatever. Now Karma configuration. In that angular.json file, whatever I have used, there is a task. So it is looking for all these file settings. Now it goes to Karma configuration.js file. It will pick up what is the browser, what framework you are going to use to run the test cases, all those things. Along with that, you also need to understand src test.ts file. Why src test.ts file is important? Open a src test.ts file. What is this test.ts file contains? So same like understand. If you want to run your application in a browser, first of all, what are you doing? Angular application has to be bootstrapped by a main module. Angular application, once it is bootstrapped, it will traverse through the scanning of the code and it will identify the Angular syntaxes. Same way, when you run your application, that unit test cases, you don't need to run it in the browser. So for that purpose, you have to bootstrap your application. To bootstrap my application, I have to use all the modules imported, browser module, dynamic, whatever, blah, blah. So that kind of settings you are going to do it here. What you are going to do? You are going to use Angular zone testing, data binding related, Angular core testing related, any libraries which requires to test your code. You need to get all these libraries, testbed, whatever, and a browser dynamic testing module. If I remove this, what it becomes? Browser dynamic module. We know what is browser dynamic module, which will help you to bootstrap your application. So for every module, they have a corresponding testing module. Platform browser dynamic testing. Declare constant requests if you need anything. First, initialize the Angular testing environment. How are you going to initialize? Initialize test environment with the whatever get test bit on the main core module you got it. Now constant. Then we find all the test cases. How do you go? You will walk through all the spec files and get them. Context.keys map your mapping with the application modules. Now the next step is that which is going to trigger angular.config.js file, angular.json file. Where is that? The src test is going to take care of everything, nothing else here. And you are also making sure assets are being inserted or included, everything. Now test.ts. Now it goes to module context, whatever you are using it. Now go to your app.module.component spec file. Your spec file is saying that boss, you need a app component. I'm importing app component. It is not going through your app.module.ts file. Why? The reason is app.module.ts, it is a replica of your TS file. Test.ts file is taking care of bootstrapping the application. Now, which component you have to bootstrap? So first, app component. That means instead of user accessing in the browser, I am testing my app component code coverage. So app component is being imported. And also apart from that, you need a test bit and async method from core testing library. I told you clearly, describe is a method. How describe looks? Describe is a method. What it is taking? A method can take a string as an argument, app component. A method can take a function as a callback. Instead of writing callback like this with the latest syntax, they introduce it without function and arrow function. This is a function body. That is what describe says. If I remove this is the method of my describe. I'm just keeping some logic inside describe. What that logic is that, see app component. This suit is related to app component. Testing of application component code. Before each, that means every time before you run a test case, this is one test case, should create the application. First of all, what are the test cases you have inside this suit? Should create the application. That means first of all, I have to make sure app route. If you go to component, this app should be created. That is what my goal. So if you go to app component spec, you are making sure that app component instance is created. Then it should have a title variable with a string called unit testing. If you go to app component, you have a title with the string called unit testing. That is what they are talking about here. Why are we doing all these things? To make sure the application is loaded properly. So that means you are able to access the title, which is a modal. What is that? Which is a modal. You can also access the method. You can also access the properties of that component. That means you are able to access the component properties and the behaviors in the unit test cases. You are verifying whether the title contains so-and-so value or not. If you are going to hit a database and fetch some records, if the record length is matching, that means you got a product. If the record length is 0, you didn't get a record. If you want to walk through some login page, success or failure, you can still validate the test here. These are called assertions. And another one, it should render title in a h1 tag. Where is the title going to be? App.component, the title variable, the model is going to render in a h1 tag called title, h1 tag. That means this entire string can be validated using this h1. I can do it. That is what we are doing in this. Should render the title in a h1 tag. What are we doing that? H1, I'm able to access the HTML element in my unit test cases. You understood what is happening? This app component.spec is a simple component. A component with app root with a title is this. And if you go to HTML page, you have a h1 tag. If you want me to remove, I can remove all these unnecessary steps so that it has only the h1 tag in it. A h1 tag contains this tag. So when you run the unit test cases, I am able to access my HTML elements along with its value. So that is also I have written in the spec file. That means I'm able to do model validation. I'm able to access my HTML elements. So I can check whether this particular element is rendered or not, whether this particular HTML element contains this text or not. I'm able to verify that in the unit test cases. Now that means your component is being covered by unit test cases. Describe is a method which contains it method. It is a test case. One test case code you will keep it here. What is the one test case I want to test it? Should have as title unit testing. That means the title variable should contain a value called unit testing. So to test that, it's a testing. So I'm calling it as one. Like this, if you have 100 components, you have to write test cases for 100 components. Otherwise, your code coverage will goes down. If you cover each component with unit testing, that means you are writing a proper way of unit test cases. Otherwise, what is the point of like having a unit test case code covered for only for 10 components, remaining 90 are not covered? Again, you have to do manual work every time to validate and everything. So to avoid that. Now, for a component, if you want to do a testing, describe is a method which is a group of test cases. You can combine them. Now, app component, it's a string. You can put a spaces also. No issues. You can put underscores. You can give a string name also. Let's assume describe string login test case or login test suit. What it does, comma. First is a string. Second is a arrow function like this and a body of it. Before each time, what I'm supposed to do, every time when you test the application, the test case, you are making sure that the component is being declared. The component is available. That is what you're configuring test module declaration. Are you using any ng module here, root module here? No. So if you observe, your before each is nothing but it runs every time before your test case gets executed. At the same time, it has an opposite. After running the test case, if you want to release some resources, you can do that. Before you run every test case, making sure that this component is available to you. So to do that, before each has a method called async manner, you have to do it. Async is a method. So arrow function. Again, in this, you have a function, the callback function, nothing but. Now you're doing. Now, how do you declare a component? You have to use a test bed dot configure testing module. What is the module you are going to test? Testing module. What is the module you are going to test? This one. Dot compile component. That means you have to compile the component. Otherwise, your application, you have to compile, make sure no errors are there. So in this testing module, you are going to tell which component to be declarations colon app component. This is what happening for every time. Now, what are you going to test every time? It, I'm going to say, now coming to test case, my component is available. What is my goal? I have to make sure my component is instantiated properly or not. If it is a HTML page, I should have done index.html like how we are doing app root. That will take care. But here we are clearly using a unit test cases. In the unit test cases, how do you make sure the component is instantiated? It is a method which will take a string and a callback function. In this test bed dot create a component. You are going to create a component constant fixer dot debug element component instance. You are getting a component instance whichever the debugging element. You got a app reference. App is a instance of your component. Now what are you supposed to do? How do you validate whether this particular instance is created or not? You need some assertions. that assertions comes with expect of app to be truthy. That means expect 1 plus 1 to be to equal something like this, or expect some array length to equal to something like this. I can write same way. What these guys have done is that assertions has so many methods: to be truthy, to equals, to not equal, not null. So many ways it has a methods. Expecting you are passing a value to be truthified and checking whether this is truthy. That means if app is not null, if app not equal to null, that means truth. So this will return a true. That means my object got instantiated, otherwise it would be a null. Once the component is instantiated, the next step which you're going to do is that it should have a title unit testing. So now the component is with you. Now create a component. You got an instance. Now app.title to equal unit testing. Why don't you do here itself saying that expecting app.title dot to equal? You can do. No one is going to stop. But the thing is, I have a separate test cases, so I'm validating it. So what you could do should have as a title unit testing constant fixer test bed creating a component, app component, whatever component you are going to instantiate. Since the component object is with me, I can access the properties methods making it to unit testing. Now go back. How do you test the application? Ng test. Now I will modify something and see your test case gets fails. Now it will success. So your test case passed successfully without any issues. Let's see. Now go and modify the value of component test to unit testing demo. Now automatically it is getting compiled. One test case failed. Which one failed? If you observe, I am expecting unit testing demo to equal to unit testing. Unit testing demo is equal to unit testing? Never. So that's why it failed. So that means based on this, it is going to fail. Same way, spec file, it should create render title in a h1 tag. So how do I access HTML element value? So HTML element, if you want to access, first you need to get an app component, and also it is detecting the changes. If there is any change automatically to a data binding, it will identify. Then you get a native element. Native element of what? Compiled query selector of h1. If there are multiple h1s, you are in screw. Then you have to put id. Which query selector you want to use? That text content I am getting it. Welcome to unit testing. The h1 contains data binding. It says two test cases failed. Why two test cases failed? Because the below test case also failed. What is the below test case? h1 dot text content. h1 has a welcome to unit testing. This also did not match earlier when I modified to unit testing demo. That is the reason why it failed. Go to app component, unit testing demo. See what is the output if you run the application in the browsers? Two test case failed. Why two test case failed? Let's see the example. Here it says unit testing demo should be equal to that. Welcome to unit testing demo. Two contains welcome to unit testing. Now why two test cases are failing? Because when you run the application, h1 tag also should contain the same string. So now your code is being covered properly. So this is how unit testing works. Now go to next level. Here is the quick examples. Jasmine framework has methods like this, and what are the each method does. Describe the script name, whatever you want to give, and the callback function. This method is used to group a set of related test cases. These are the methods provided by Jasmine. It is a method used to perform the real testing. What do you want to test it? Expecting is a assertions. You are passing something and you are expecting that to be matching with that. To be, the method specifies that expected value of the test before each, after each. Let's assume you're going to create a database connection, or you're going to initialize some object and you want to destroy that. After each, you can use it. These are the methods which will be using it. Same continuation, evaluation methods: to be, to equal, to match, to be, to contains, to be less than, to be greater than, not equal to. So all these methods are available. Regex also can be possible. So they have given some example for calculator. My calculator describe a method should know how to multiply something. So they are creating a component. App is an instance of component matter expecting. App is an instance of app component. Something they are putting high level examples. Now it's time to understand a protractor. Protractor is very important concept. Functional testing you are going to do it. Protractor is a testing library that allows you to test application workflows, simulating user actions without the need to perform them manually. That means I have another example of unit testing, Angular unit testing example, ng serve. So it will serve the application. Once compilation successfully happens, 4200 is a port number. Now go to the browser, localhost 4200. What it does, observe. It has a sign in username, admin, password is admin123, admin@gmail.com. Now login. What it does, it showed me a login successful page. So this is the application which you have developed and you are asking QA to test the application. What QA has to do every time? He has to launch the application in the browser saying that localhost 4200. He has to enter the username, password, admin@gmail, and click a button and verify whether the login successful or not. So how do I automate this process so that I don't need to hire a QA engineer or a test engineer? So to do that automation purpose, we have a concept called Selenium or Protractor. So ng E2E. I would say ng end-to-end test. See, the browser opened, it closed. Why? Because we haven't started the Protractor server. So before you do this, you have to run a few things. Protractor WebDriver Manager. First of all, you have to install npm install -g protractor globally. Why? This protractor is a thing which can be used for multiple projects, not only for single purpose. So whenever I run command called protractor -g globally, it requires a permission. It's a user level permission access problem. I have to install as a sudo or I have to open my command prompt in the administrator mode. See, it's a permission issue. That means I'm trying to install some library at a user level. That means if that library is a vulnerable, it will impact my application system. So it is asking for a permission. So I have to say sudo npm install. How do you install dependencies? Npm install -g bole to globally protractor. Done. So it is asking for a password. That means I'm giving a permission. Now it will install without any issues. Once the protractor is installed successfully, now you can say protractor -v. It will tell you the hyphen version, protractor version 5.4.2 to check the version of my protractor. You can do this for Angular command line interface also. ng version also will work, Angular version. The next step is you don't need to check that. If you want, you can do it. Now you can say WebDriver Manager. Protractor requires a WebDriver Manager. That means you will be testing the application using a Chrome, Firefox, IE, right? For that, you are going to interact with the web application, web elements, HTML input, text box, checkbox, radio button. So for that, some driver manager is required, WebDriver Manager. You have to say update. This is already installed when you install Protractor. So again, you have to sudo WebDriver Manager update. Make sure you are opening in a command prompt in an administrator mode permission. WebDriver is updated. Now, once this is done, the last thing which you need to do is that WebDriver Manager start. Then who will tell me all these things? Now the WebDriver Manager is up and running. Selenium server is up and running on port number 4444. That means when you install a Protractor, you are also getting a Selenium server on your machine. Now go to the browser, localhost 4444. If you say Selenium server is up and running. If you want to see console, go to the console. No sessions are ready. How do you know what all needs to be installed? Very simple. Angular Protractor tutorial. Make sure you are opening a Angular, not a Angular JS. Tutorial end-to-end testing Angular. That is wrong. Angular JS. But this guy also tells you the same. But better you always open a Angular 5, we can say, or 8, whatever. So you can follow these steps. Here is the details. So I have done the same, whatever I'm supposed to. My WebDriver server is up and running. That means Selenium server is up and running. Don't kill it. Now open another terminal. So far, whatever magic I have done is only to start the Selenium server and install. Make sure you update the Selenium server when you install it. Now CD Suresh, CD Angular, CD unit testing example. This is what my project. Now what you need to do is that ng end-to-end testing. End-to-end testing shortcut I will tell you. For now, let it run the demo. First, it will start the browser. It will try to enter the username password automatically without my key in. I don't need to involve in it. It will automatically does. It will click the button. It will verify whether the successfully executed or not, login successfully happened or not, those things. It is launching the browser, localhost 4915. Data will be entered. Suresh, I'm not entering anything. Admin 123. I'm not entering anything. Login success. And it will close. The test case executed successfully. Did I do anything? I have automated that. It's like a robo is doing it. Now go to the code. The code package.json file. What is the script? End to end. When I say ng e to e, it started triggering something which we don't know as of now. We already have Protector installed for development purpose. Even you don't need to say npm install -g, but as a practice I made it. Now go to Protector configuration file. In this Protector also I told you clearly, we will be using Jasmine as a framework. All script timeouts, any script which doesn't identify or execute within 11 seconds, it will fail. And the specifications, this is not a unit testing, this is an end-to-end testing. So you need to go to this folder location, /e2e, go to there. At the src folder level, outside you have a e2e. In the u2e, you have a subfolder, or it can be, you don't need to. It will go to e2e.spec.ts. This is the main entry file which will trigger Protector config.json, which will use Chrome browser, which is running. And what is my base application? Localhost 4200. Which application I have to test? First of all, application has to run. If the application is running in a running state, then only my end-to-end testing can start working. So first of all, my application has to be up and running. Jasmine is a framework which I'm going to use. Default timeout interval 30 seconds. And now on prepare tsconfig. When the first time it gets executed, tsconfig end-to-end JSON file is the one which we need to understand. What it is doing is that it is going through all these things, extending TypeScript configuration file, tsconfig.js file, output.tsc end-to-end file, common.js, ECMAScript file, Jasmine, whatever. Now the main entry file is this. What it is doing is that I have a component. What is that component? Go to my code, app component, app.module.ts. I have a main app component. I have a login component. What my login component will do, and it has a forms module imported. So now you have a login component. Login component is a root component for you. Now go to login component at HTML. What login component has? It has only HTML code, one form, input, username, and a data model binding, ng model. Why do we use ng model? Whether you modify the model of username, it will reflect in the UI. Whether you change in the UI, it will reflect in the model. So you will say username, password. When you click a button called login, it will call the method called validate login. Go to HTML page of login component HTML. What it does, it will validate, and it has a variable called this.status. When you click on a button called login, instead of hitting a database, right now I hard coded. What it does is that it will change the status of login message to success. By default, login message is empty. The variable like title, it is empty. Now, when this becomes a successful login, you send a database call, you hit a auth API, you got a successful response, then you are setting it to successfully logged in. Now, when you say successfully logged in, if status is not equal to empty, you are showing a message called login successful with a green color message. Now, this is the component. How do you make this component as an automation, automated? Go to very first is this one. So to make app e2e spec.ts file, first of all, you have to import a Protector. Protector gives you option of browser. Why you need to import a browser? Because you are going to interact with the browser. Import login test case from login.test.py. So login test case. Who wrote that login test case? Here it is. Login.py.ts. Describe is a test group. Now before each whatever blah blah login test case I am declaring, before each time you test a test case, login test case I want to instantiate, and the test case which I want to do is login test. What it does is that login.launch app loading the application into browser. How do you do that login? What is the login? Go to login test case. Login test case is nothing but login.test.py. Open that login.test.py. Import browser from Protector, and also few more important statements, because see, First of all, I have to launch a browser. I have to use method. Login test case is a class. I have to say return browser.get. Whenever you say browser.get, browser is given by protector. Whenever I say browser.get, you are launching this application localhost. Now launch is done. The second step, if you want to access a input fields, you have to use by method, element method. Elements can be identified by ID. Elements HTML input fields can be identified by CSS, class, or ID, name, or export. Now what are we doing? I have a main entry file wherein I am getting a login test case. Before each time, I am creating an object to this login test case. My login test case contains internally methods. I have instantiated something. Now my testing is starting. Login is a reference to login test case. Now login has a method called launch app. Launch app has a logic to launch the browser. That's it. Next step. After browser is open, I have to say login.doLogin. DoLogin, what it is doing? If you go to login.doLogin method, it will sleep the browser for some time because it has to wait. Once the application is loaded, it has to wait for some time so that all the elements will be rendered. Once the application is rendered properly, what is the element I see? Login page. So how do I access my login page? I can say by.name. What is by.name? Your login component has a HTML element name with this, identify with this. Go to here, by.name. What is the name of the thing? Username. This needs to be converted into, casted into element so that I can get element object dot send keys. Send keys is a method used to enter the data. What is the data you want to enter? Suresh. Now, first input username is entered with a value called Suresh. This is the value you guys have seen whenever I entered here something. Now, if I make this as a John, this becomes a John. If you want to run ng e2e, now you will see John. Browser is entering data. Now you will see John. John is being entered. Now come back. So that means I will add one more input field. Then you will get an idea how to do that. So one more input field, if you want to add it here, div, some input field name text. Now go to the application here. Once do login, right? I would say by dot name. You can use ID also. By dot name, first name. If you want to enter the data, you have to use element which is given by protector. So now you have to say element. Element is what? It will give a method to send keys. Then you can enter the value Smith or something. Launch the application once again. ng e2e. It will compile the application. It will launch the application and it will start the test cases. This is the beauty of AngularJS application. The first name will enter with Smith, John, password, email. There is a delay for every enter because I have added delay like that. After entering, launching the application, wait for 2 seconds. After entering username, wait for 3 seconds. After entering password, wait for 3 seconds. After entering the email, wait for 3 seconds. Click the button, wait for some. How do you click a button? Element by.button text. Go to the HTML page, look at the button. Button has a text called login. So to access that, there is a method called by.button text, login method, and convert into element. And you have a method called click. When you click on that, wait for 1 second. Now return element dot login component dot paragraph. There is a text by.css. I told you, go to login component and see the paragraph tag. What is the CSS it has? Alert success. With this CSS also, you can access the component. By.css login component, you have a paragraph tag. You have one more paragraph, then that is a problem. But right now I have only one I have used. And this entire thing I'm converting into element get a text. That means the text entered in the green colored successful login will come here. That is what I am returning. Who is calling this do login? The do login will be called by this guy very first time. So I'm expecting this do login will return a message called to equal to login successful. Then test case says it successfully executed. Now what we are going to do is that I will add a button in the login component. This is what my login component. Now running the application on a production server. So for this, I need some engine Nx. Till now, we were building our application on a node server, local machine. To make an application operational, in case of multiple requests, we need to deploy it on production server Engine IX. This is called Engine IX. Engine IX, what it does is that Engine IX is a web server software that allows you to significantly reduce the page load time. It's an open source software that provides a HTTP server capabilities, mainly used for reverse proxying, caching, and load balancing. Why do we use the load balancing? Let's assume you have application developed, millions of people are requesting your application, millions of people are accessing your application. When the number of requests coming to the same server, obviously the number of threads are very less. It reaches to the thread sizes. So it will automatically, the application for server performance goes down because the load is more. To avoid this, we will have multiple servers installed and the load is being distributed to multiple servers using a concept called load balancing, all these things. But those things can be taken care by infrastructure team. You don't need to involve. But if your company is very small, maybe you are supposed to involve it. Designed for maximum performance and stability. All these are features of load balancing, reverse proxy. Reverse proxy is something which runs behind the firewall to take the request and send it to the corresponding servers. So use non-threaded and event-driven architecture. Nginx follows non-threaded and event-driven approach. That means it doesn't depend much on threading concepts to handle the request and all. So wherever it requests, maybe internally, it's like Node.js concepts, event-driven programming. Architecture of Nginx. Nginx uses master-slave architecture by supporting event-driven, asynchronous, non-blocking model. This is the same concept Node.js also follows. Event-driven. That means when something happens, then only it gets triggered. Otherwise, that piece of code will not be get disturbed. Same way, when the request comes, then only that will be handled. Non-blocking. What is blocking? Blocking means some CPU intensive tasks. Like, I want to read some data from a database. It's a blocking. You got a request, you do some manipulation, you send the response back, it is not non-blocking. You got a request that has to run some job which involves some like 2 to 3 seconds delay, it's a blocking. It has to read some file, it's a blocking, like that. Master slave concept, user makes a request comes to workers thread, worker server, whatever, and a proxy caching mechanism, cache loader, cache manager. It works on a master and slave. That means you will have one server as a master, others are workers. That means you can do horizontal scaling here. Web server, application server, memcached, and backend. All these concepts can be implemented. Same web processors, worker processor accepts the request and start processing the request. Whenever it request needs to be interact with the master, it will interact with the master and response will be sent. Cache loader, cache manager. Now, how to configure Nginx? You have to use firewalls, all these things. But I don't have all this set up with me. Go to this location, configure all those things, deploy your application and do that. Deploying application using Docker image. Why do we need to use a Docker? What is the containerization? We'll talk about. Problems before containers. My application is working in laptop, but not in a testing or production environment. Why? You develop an application, it works perfectly on your machine because you are a developer, you know how to fix the versioning issues, you know how to install the required perfect libraries on your machine. You can spend time. But when the application move to production environment or a testing environment, you are not the responsible person. You are responsible person only for application functionality, not for dependencies or something. Who has to take care? One, you have to coordinate with the infrastructure team to make sure all the required dependencies are available in that particular server or not. Version number matching or those things. Maybe you will be testing your application on a Windows box. Suddenly you will move your application to test environment which is running on a Linux box. So there are some issues with the versioning. That is what they are talking about. My application is working in my laptop but not in testing or production environment because of the runtime drift. Configuration drift or dependencies drift. It could be configuration issue. It could be dependencies versions which I am using it. May not be suitable for Linux or production environment because production servers might be running on a Windows 7 or Windows 2000 application server, whatever it could be. So my laptop has version number 5.4 and test environment has latest version of software or of Angular or whatever it may be. Production has old version 4. On premise we have version 6. So there are versioning differences. How do we avoid this problem? That's where your containerization came into picture. How containers solve that issue? It's like creating a virtual environment for you. Python, Node.js, all these people started creating a virtual environments. Containers are the solution to face these issues as it packs up the code and all its dependencies. What it does is that when you use a containerization concepts, it packs up application along with your dependencies. Single unit that it can run reliably from one computing environment to another computing environment. So what all you are going to carry? Your code, your configuration settings, your dependencies, your runtime environments also you are carrying along with the shipment. This can even be done by a virtual machine. But virtual machine, if you use, it takes lot of memory because every virtual machine will have its own operating system running. You have to maintain multiple operating system. Virtual machines takes up lot of resources as they have a full copy of operating system, virtual copy of hardware, which adds up a lot of RAM, CPU, whereas in containers, you just need to supporting program libraries and the runtime environment. You don't need to carry all those things. Guest operating system containers. Virtual machines will have host operating system, hypervisor, guest operating systems. That means a virtual box can have all these things, multiple OS and all applications running. Whereas containerization having only host operating system, which will be running inside a container engine. Containerization is a separate training, GKP, all those things. Containerization. Google provided Kubernetes. Why Docker? Dockers are used to develop an application using Docker containers with any language and any toolchain. Dockers are something to run your applications which are sitting in a container. Multiple containers can put it on a Docker tool and can be run. You build, you ship, you run the application anywhere at any time, even in a cloud also. That is the concept of Docker. Why Docker means develop an application using Docker containers. Docker provides a containerization. Any language, whether Python, Java, Node.js, Angular application, anything it can be supported. Ship the Dockerized application and dependencies anywhere to QA, teammates, or the cloud without breaking anything. You can ship all these things, the applications which you are going to run. Scale to thousands of nodes, move between data centers and cloud, update with zero downtime and more reliability. You are going to have it. Why? Because see, you are not maintaining locally. It is being managed by Dockers, containerization concepts. Multiple environments are supported. What is Docker then? The Docker is a tool designed to build, deploy, and run the application with ease by using containers. So this is the symbol of Docker. You can use. There are multiple Docker supported by in the market, but Docker, if you look at it, each one is a container. This can be Node.js application. This can be Java application. This can be .NET. This can be Python. This can be Angular. But still, you can bring them into one place and run it. Build, ship, run any software anywhere. Docker allows a developer packaging of an application with all of the requirements such as libraries and other dependencies and ship it all in one package. It ensures that your application works seamlessly in any environment, development, test or production environment. Terminologies in Docker. What terminologies we have to use? Docker. First, Docker file. How do you install a Docker? Install Docker on Windows, Mac, whatever. So here are the steps. If you guys are using Windows, you have to download the Docker and install it. For Mac, for Windows, download and start using it. Once the Docker is ready, you are supposed to log in by creating a Docker account. You can say Docker login. Docker login. Sign into Docker, hubdocker.com. Now go to the application. Once the Docker is installed, you can create a Docker account, then create an Angular project, create a Docker file. Docker file contains a information, the configuration, what is the distribution package, all those things. Docker file is a basic building block of Docker containers. Docker file is a file with a set of instructions and forms the base for any Docker image. Every time base image is going to be based upon another image, you are going to pick up a base image and build your application on that image. So we will take some base image and start building the application. So what is an image? So container, image, base image, kernel, something. Image is read-only file system that is used to a template to launch the container. So our application, when you build and create a Docker container, it creates an image. Start from the base image that has your dependencies and your code custom. When an image is turned into a container, the Docker engine takes that image and adds to read-write file system. On top of it, you'll be running your application. So we will see one example. What is a Docker container? Docker container is a package which everything required to make a software to run except the operating system. Hence, making the application portable, all you need to do is that libraries and settings to make software work on any system. That means you are ready to ship a package which can run on any platform. It makes the container efficient, self-contained, lightweight, guarantees that the package software will always run regardless of whether it is deployed on Docker file, Docker image, the container. Docker Hub. As I said, Docker Hub is a tool. It's like a GitHub where you put your images and check out your images. You can also start the Docker containers there. Docker Hub is that pull, push, all those things. You can log into web portal, all those things can be done. Docker commands, Docker pull, Docker create image, Docker run, Docker build, Docker container, Docker login, Docker push. Once you install the Docker, first you need to create a Docker account. With that Docker login, you have to provide a credentials from command line, or you can use the tools also, it will work. So these are the commands. It's like a GitHub repository, guys, end of the day. We will create one project and show you. Docker ps, Docker kill, all these are there. Now go to the application. So this is the application we are going to see. There is an application built already. Check out that Angular application, convert into Docker container and run it in the Docker. So first of all, GitHub clone. Take out this step. Copy this. Open any terminal. We are in February batch. So here I'm going to keep that git clone. It's like git clone. Somebody created a project, you are using it. So now once that is done, you import the project. Clone project is happened. Even you can clone your project. Same like how I used to share the link. Angular February. The project name is this. What is that? AS Aston Villa app. Now git clone is done. What is the next step? Ng build hyphen product. So when you say ng build, it does building, but you have to pass a parameter called dash dash build. When you do this, it does some minification when you do this. So I have to go to project location, Aston Villa app, ng build hyphen prod. So you are saying that build the, I have to run npm install also. See, project is checked out, but node underscore modules is not there. So npm install is the command we need to run. So it creates a node underscore modules folder and adds all the required dependencies. No errors. Now I have run the command called npm install. It is downloading the required dependencies into the project. Now you have a project with you. The project should contain some Docker file. Docker file is nothing but a set of instructions for you to run your application in a containerization. I don't know how many of you heard about containerization. All these are called kind of extra stuff they have added, containerization, all those things. But right now people are using up to cloud and all. Another step, containerization, where you want to run the virtual environment kind of things, but not mandatory for you to complete your Angular course. It will be useful if your company is planning to do containerization. It is useful. Otherwise, normal Angular application is good enough for you. So you are done with this. Now go to the application and see it has a Docker file. Now if you want your application to create and add a Docker file, please add it, not a problem. This is a basic file. What it does, it has a work from node 12.7 alpha in as a build, some the node and all, working directory user src app, copy package.json file, run npm install. This will be done on the Docker, not here. Copy dot dot. You're copying something from here to there. run npm run build. They are building something from Nginx server. They are using it. These are the mirrors available already. So now copy from build user src app distribution app. It will create some distribution package and moving into Nginx server. That is what on the Docker, not on the local machine. Now go to here. You saw this. They are telling what is a Docker file and all. Now you have to create a Docker image. See Docker build. They're building application -t av app image space dot. Copy this statement. If you go back to Edureka, they're clearly telling you all these commands. Docker build. Same we are going to use that. Now go to terminal, open it, creating a Docker image for you. It's building. So there is an image created with the name called AV app latest. This is the Docker image name which just get created. What is the next step? If you want to see how many Docker images are there in your system, you can simply say Docker image ls. AV app image latest created. Now go back. Docker run. I want to run my image AV app in a container called AV app container -d in a background mode with the port number 8080 locally. The image name is AV app image. That means where are you going to run this application? You created container, right? So Docker image run blah blah and so on. Now your application is ready. That says there is already in use some application. I have created it earlier. So now once this step is executed on your machine, now if you go to localhost 8080, it's not coming up. So I have to remove the application first. AV app container is already there. Why don't we change the name? AV app container new. Let's see. Done. Now go to localhost 4200 and see 8080. Application running. I'm able to see everything. My application is up and running. Whatever they showed in the dashboard, it is up and running. So now your application is running. So what is that image you need to look for? Docker image -ls. So this image, if you are able to take this, it will work on any container. Docker containers, anything, any environment. You don't need to bother about it. So that is what you need to understand. Docker container. If you want to see list of Docker containers, how many containers are there in my machine? 2. Docker container ls. AV app image, AV app container new. That's what I have seen right just now. So like that. We are done for the day. Thank you. Bye.